European leaders are signaling a major shift in tone toward the United States and Russia, warning that Europe must prepare for a wider war. Officials across the European Union say they believe the world is approaching a dangerous moment similar to the period before World War II, and that Europe is ready to defend itself militarily if necessary. As the head of MI6, Sir/C, the first female chief of MI6, explains, she warns that Russia remains an aggressive expansionist power seeking to dominate Ukraine and intimidate NATO. She says hundreds of thousands have died due to Vladimir Putin's historical distortions and prolonged war strategy. She emphasizes that Russia is also attacking Europe through cyber warfare, sabotage, disinformation, drone incursions, and covert operations, calling this the export of chaos. She adds that new technologies, such as AI-powered drones and hyper-personalized digital tools, are becoming dangerous new weapons that could redefine modern warfare. As the UK Air Chief Marshal Sir Richard Knighton explains, he says the war in Ukraine proves Russia's willingness to target civilians and neighboring states. He states clearly that Russia aims to weaken and ultimately destroy NATO. According to him, Europe is now facing the most dangerous security environment in decades, and peace can no longer be taken for granted. He calls for a whole-of-nation response, including rebuilding military strength, defense industries, infrastructure resilience, and civilian preparedness. He stresses that if deterrence fails, the cost will not only fall on soldiers, but on entire societies. As the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs explains, she says Donbass is not Vladimir Putin's final objective. She warns that if Russia secures eastern Ukraine, it will move further, threatening the rest of Ukraine and other European regions. She urges Europe to learn from history and not repeat past mistakes by underestimating expansionist aggression. As the EU High Representative further adds on security guarantees, she explains that countries join NATO because they fear Russian invasion, which is why Finland, Sweden, and the Baltic states sought protection. She says that if NATO membership is not an option for Ukraine, then security guarantees must be real, meaning actual troops, military capabilities, and enforceable commitments, not written promises. As Ukrainian Member of Parliament Kira Rudik states, she says multiple peace plans have been discussed, but none answer the key question: what will stop Vladimir Putin from attacking Ukraine again? She says no finalized security guarantees exist and expresses skepticism about negotiations led by Donald Trump, stating there is no evidence Trump has secured meaningful concessions from Putin. She questions how any peace deal could succeed without firm enforcement mechanisms. As German Chancellor Friedrich Merz declares, he states that the era of Pax Americana is effectively over for Europe. He says the United States is now acting primarily in its own interests, meaning Europe must assert its own power and independence. He emphasizes that Europe is stronger than it believes and must act accordingly. As German Chancellor Friedrich Merz further warns, he says Russia's war against Ukraine is not just about Ukraine, but about Europe as a whole. He compares the situation to 1938, warning that territorial concessions will not satisfy Putin. He urges Europeans to study Putin's speeches, strategies, and official documents to understand that Russia will not stop if Ukraine falls. As U.S. President Donald Trump claims, he states that Ukraine has already lost its territory and suggests that the outcome of the war is effectively decided. He says security guarantees are being discussed with Europe to prevent the war from restarting. However, European and Ukrainian officials strongly dispute Trump's claims, noting that Ukraine has successfully resisted Russian advances and retains significant territory. As the German foreign minister explains, he says recent negotiations in Berlin showed that the U.S. delegation appeared to have coordinated positions with Moscow in advance. He adds that while talks were substantive, it remains unclear whether meaningful progress will be achieved. As Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky responds, He says discussions with U.S. representatives were important but included proposals that threatened Ukraine's dignity and sovereignty. He confirms Ukraine rejects giving up eastern territories, abandoning EU or NATO aspirations, or accepting weak security guarantees. He emphasizes that Ukraine needs binding, enforceable protections before any military or civilian decisions can be made. As European leaders outline proposed security guarantees for Ukraine, they include permanent military support, a strong Ukrainian army, multinational European-led forces, U.S.-backed ceasefire monitoring, legally binding responses to future attacks, continued freezing of Russian assets, and a clear path for Ukraine to join the European Union. As Russian officials Sergei Lavrov, Yuri Ushakov, and Kirill Dmitriev state, they demand full Ukrainian surrender and insist NATO roll back its presence to pre-1997 borders. European leaders interpret this as proof that Russia is not negotiating in good faith. Conclusion: European officials say the continent must prepare for a long-term confrontation, warning that failure to act decisively now could lead to a broader global conflict. Many leaders openly state that Europe is entering its most dangerous period since World War II.